Morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTube. This is Rosh, and this is a video series I'm putting together called AxeFX 3 Basics. A little about me. I'm a guitar player based in LA and a guitar tech. Some of my clients include Steve Vai, Melissa Etheridge, Perfect Circle, Bush, Dweezil Zappa, I think I said Def Leppard. So I wanted to give back to the Fractal community and show some of my approaches on how I build presets in the Fractal Audio AxeFX 3. So I want to thank all of you guys for commenting and making requests for videos. So definitely have a lot of stuff queued up, but I would be more than happy to cover any topics you'd like. So if we get into some advanced stuff, that's totally cool too. Doesn't have to be basics, but I just wanted to give a video series for Fractal users of all skill levels and all. So if you just got one, or if you've been using a Fractal for years, hopefully some of these tips will help you build better presets. So in a previous video, somebody requested for a compressor block, so I did one, but also requesting how to use a multiband compressor. So it was also in the context of hard rock, but the multiband compressor is a really great block. I use it a lot. And so let's talk about what it does. So multiband compressor, if you want to think of it, if you saw my previous videos with a compressor block, basically the multiband compressor is like having 3 compressors in one. But the cool thing is when you use a regular compressor, especially leading into a guitar amp, you're compressing the entire signal, the entire guitar signal. In this case, a multiband compressor compresses very specific frequencies or around very specific frequencies. So that's a really good thing. So like if you just need to tame certain frequencies or compress them, that's when you would use the multiband compressor. Now the other thing and the other approach I use a multiband compressor for is if I'm doing kind of an 80s style clean guitar sound. Back in the day, guys like Steve Lukather and Mike Landau, with their rack-mounted studio rigs, they would use guitar directly into a compressor without an amplifier. So you would get this kind of like super dry, clean, direct guitar signal. So we're not going to cover that in this video, but I'll be more than happy to like kind of show some approaches for some 80s style clean guitar stuff. So if you're familiar with guitar players like Steve Lukather and Mike Landau and who else? Maybe Tim Pierce. They would definitely use that sound and maybe use like rack-mounted delays and choruses to get that really cool stereo 80s guitar clean sound. Well, this video is going to cover more of like the hard rock, like how you'd use a multiband compressor. So let's build a hard rock preset. Let's use maybe the Euro Uber, and let's reset that block, and let's use some Euro cabs. Okay, so cool, they got that, and they got this. So again, my general approach with most rhythm guitar sounds that aren't clean, basically anything from crunch on, I use 2 cabinets, one with a dynamic mic and one with a ribbon mic, and then I blend the 2 just to get the sound I'm going for. And this should have kept my usual low cut. So I generally always low cut around 80, and then maybe 8500. You can play with the values, but depending on how much low end and high end you need. But this usually helps guitar tones sit in the mix, especially if you're playing live. Okay, so here's like your Uber sound, and let's bypass this. So here's the Euro. I'm in drop D right now. Okay, so we're gonna bring that volume down. And so one of the things about high gain sounds that you run into, and if you saw my high gain video, there's generally like a lot of low end in these amps. And if you're actually watching the meter, if I'm just strumming the chords, then you get a really even guitar sound. But what happens is if you palm mute, you end up getting this like huge kind of jump in volume, about 5 or 6 dB. And so that low end and that real muddy low end generally kind of conflicts with the bass, it conflicts with the kick drum. So let's dial in just kind of like a standard, high gain sound. So something like this. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Okay, so now if you notice, whenever I chug the low strings, there's this like huge jump in low end and huge jump in volume. But if you're just strumming the chords, it's totally fine. So what a lot of guys do if you're using a high gain sound is use the multiband compressor to tame that low end. So usually the low end of the guitar is somewhere between like 80 to 120 hertz. So what you're going for is that you want to like chug on a low string and then see how the compressor reacts at that frequency. So we're going to bring this down a little bit. Okay, so right there you saw that it went down even more. Let's bring it lower. Okay, so somewhere in the 80 to 90 range, we're getting this like low end we're going to use this compressor to clean up. So let's get rid of the threshold here. So again, the threshold is how loud you have to play before the compressor kicks in. So I'm going to put these values at 0. So they're not going to turn on. But we're going to focus on this mid one right now. So this is the one that we're going to use to kind of tame this like, woofy low end. So the threshold is how loud you have to play before the compressor kicks on. The ratio is how far it brings down the volume of that. So let's turn the compressor on and let's compare. Okay, so huge jump in volume. So let's bring down the compressor. And let's meter that. Okay, so we're going to bring that down just a hair more. Let's do -7. Maybe -6. Okay, cool. So now here's without the compressor. And here's with the compressor. So you hear how it just cleans up that low end? It just gets rid of all that kind of like weird, woofy low end, muddy low end. And again, especially if you're playing kind of heavy music like this, you want your palm mutes to have the impact and you want to be able to hear them clearly without them getting in the way of anything else. So what we're going to do is we're going to probably bring up the ratio and maybe even bring down the threshold. So now as we bring this knob down, the compressor is going to kick in sooner. So what you're going for and what you're listening for is that you want the low chugs that are palm muted to be the same volume as the open string. So I'm going to play like a bar of just like the open string and then a bar of palm muted open string. Okay, so now if I turn the compressor off, you'll hear there's a huge difference when I palm mute versus when I play the open string. So you hear that it's just this compressor block again is all about cleaning up that low end. That's why I really recommend using low cuts. If you're playing high gain stuff, use this multi-band compressor. Let's bring this down a little bit just to kind of clean up that low end. So you hear that like without it, it doesn't sound as aggressive. You can get this kind of woofy, low rumble rather than this really aggressive low end. So if I play the same kind of thing without the compressor block, it just gets too muddy down there. Now, what you want to do is you want to kind of play with these values and just make sure that the tone that you're getting is very consistent all the way through. And you can still hear the clarity, because again, cleaning up that low end really helps with the clarity of your guitar part. Now, these two knobs, the attack and the release, is basically how quickly the compression happens on those low notes around this frequency. So if we put the attack as fast as possible, it'll just compress right away. So and if you put the attack up, then the compressor is not going to kick in right away before it kicks in. So you can play with these values. I generally just keep them around 10. I keep them around the default unless I need it, unless I'm playing something really, really specific, like where it's super tight rhythms, like if I was playing gent or something. And then the release is how quickly the compressor lets go of pushing the note down. The level is basically how much or how loud the compressor is going to be in this frequency. So again, I also just keep that there. Or you can keep it 0 here and then just bring it here in the level. And again, the level is the overall multiband compressor versus just this one specific frequency. So I generally will kind of just level it out in the block because these other frequencies are kicking in, but we put the threshold so high they're not going to kick in too quickly. So you hear the clarity in the low end is really, really important because, again, if you're playing this high gain, aggressive kind of music, you're always going to be fighting the kick drum, you're fighting the bass, and you may be in a lower tuning, like drop C or something. And so it really just helps that low end remain clear without getting in the way of anything. So here's, I don't know, like some kind of riff. Now here's where the compressor is. So hopefully that is one specific way you can use the multiband compressor to just kind of tame that low end on your high gain amps. Works on any amp because what you're doing is you're putting the compressor at the end. So it's taking this whole guitar sound, kind of squishing the bottom end of it, cleaning up that low end and just helping your tone be more aggressive. Again, if you need to feel those chugs, if you need to feel that low end, you might not want to use a multiband compressor, but then you run, of course, the risk of getting buried in the mix that way. So I know guitar players, they love playing with 412s and they love feeling that low end when they palm mute, but at the same time, you're just trying to find the right balance between that feeling that low end and then taming that low end using this compressor. So definitely want to experiment, definitely want to make sure that you're listening in context rather than by yourself, because it's very common that guitar players will just listen to their guitar tone completely isolated by themselves, not in the context of a band, get like this really like heavy aggressive sound with tons of low end, and then when they play with a band, their tone completely disappears because, again, you have to give space to the kick drum, the bass, and then you want to the low notes of the guitar want to sit right above that, no matter what tuning you're in. So, anyways, hopefully that is some tips that you guys can use when you're using the multiband compressor for high gain sounds. In the future, I will definitely show some compressor settings and stuff that I used for like kind of clean stuff without an amp. Okay, so until next time, if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to leave a comment, and I would be more than happy to make some videos and some tutorial videos to help you guys out. All right, thanks so much, and see you guys next time.